I'm going to do a little side trip today because of the faculty meeting yesterday. I'll tell you guys what's going on. Andrew wanted me to report to the faculty how we're bending this course from the way it was offered before. You guys know all those changes from the way it used to be to the way it is now. A lot of faculty are antsy about the freedom in class. So they're kind of on a fence. Last year, it was super tightly wrapped with products due on certain days. And then the complaint was, all the things that I told you guys. You have to go organize this. So when I reported to them how we're running this, I got a barrage of concerns. Not you shouldn't be doing that, but do you realize all the things that can go wrong with these kinds of freedoms, which I think we've talked about, and you guys know where quicksand is and that kind of thing. So I wanted to air some things out and get a feel for how things are going with you, and then what I'm going to do is talk a little more about schedule and next semester and that kind of stuff. Because one of the charges they gave me was make sure they understand the spring game, so that you're not thinking you got this, but you got that. Time investment. If you've been looking at the graduate manual in the Office of Graduate Studies, you can see a lot of that stuff in New York and area. But I want to spend some time on it today. And then I've got another handout here, which maybe is a little more explicit about things you may want to think about having done or largely done by the fall. And I want to start by talking about actually having you talk about how this looseness is working for you. I need to know whether you would rather have more of a hardline set of products, not in draft form, but much more finished, on certain dates. In other words, do you want more structure? Do you feel like you're drifting and sort of in trouble? Or give me some feedback if you're comfortable about what it feels like on your side of the table.
I think last year when we kept hearing those graduate students, all of the structure, how they had to back down. They kept saying they had no time to do reading. I feel like the way it is right now, I think we're at a level that we all, at least I feel that we all talk to each other, that we understand what we need to do, and we can't just lollygag and not do it. Like, we're already graduate students for a reason. Like, we're on a mission to finish a thesis. So that's why we help each other, find something with Bob and Priya, tell them I don't do speak to themselves, you know what I'm saying? So vice versa. And I guess we're all making homework fun. So I think the biggest thing is to follow that. And I feel like it's working, I guess, in a way.
Okay. What else?
Well, I know that the structure from each of us is different for completing a thesis. And like you said, everyone will need to work and I feel like I'm able to do what needs to be done for the betterment of the thesis and not trying to get something done ahead of time. That's kind of good stuff. That's how I feel.
What else?
I was wondering, because since they brought this up to you, not just, I don't know if they brought this up to anybody else individually, as far as from chairperson to the student, but I feel like I don't have a problem with the structure that we have going on right now. I mean, we should be able to work at our own pace, as long as we get it done when it's supposed to get done. I mean, rushing into getting stuff done is just going to be, what? Yeah, so I don't want to say that. But yeah, exactly. So So I think how we're going is fine. And anybody within our committee has a concern, I feel like we should bring it up individually instead of.
Well, they're not making a move to change what we're doing. They were just concerned because of really a pretty radical shift in tone of the course, and the extent to which the course moved into and, in a sense, sort of took over the management of the thesis progress.
Understand where you're supposed to be and alright, say for my chair, she's taking by next week I should see a draft of the introduction, the abstract, even if it's not all complete with a little bit of students. And then I'll take it to her, she revises and say, according to the topic, I think you need to have this, and that. For each time she needs to see something. So it's not as if you're saying it, but you're not doing it because the main cheer is no way of what you need to do. Because at the start she said this semester is really have to get on all the stuff complete because next semester is more about revising and finding out what to do complete work.
What else? What other thoughts come up? Think about that. I'm not hearing anybody say you wish there was more structure where you had to hit certain marks by certain days. I say that. I'm wondering if anybody's sitting.
I was going to say, I do feel like I want to have a list of what what structure needs to be done by. Because I don't know about other people's trades, but we have an understanding of having things done, but a little bit of structure would be nice as far as.
Keeping in mind that, as we said when this course started, that everything that we do here is at least 3 levels back. You're the first level, then there's the chair, and then there's the course. So while I ask for things and hope they're going to be at a certain level of quality completeness, I know that's not the main line of production. I just try to make sure that we get as many of these fronts up and running and working simultaneously. What else is on your mind when you do that? Feedback. Any other thoughts about it?
I think too much structure would make the whole piece process less about what we're thinking or what we're doing, and be more about just the structure of what's going on.
And just try to fix that.
Yeah, because I know a lot of times if you have a time constraint or something, you do something just to turn it in and not focus with actually what you really need to. I think that's what the future should be about.
And then so far, the way you've been working by us, like for example, with the literature review, present study, I was still thinking about introduction, but when you touch on that, you kind of expressed it with your diagram and everything, kind of got me thinking, okay, so I really need to do that, and that's actually what I'm focusing on right now. And also, table of contents, little things that I thought that didn't really mean too much. The way you broke it down kind of made me more emphasized, like, okay, this matters. And it keeps me on my own pace, but it just helps. And then my chair, put it there, and it was like, oh, do this, do that. I wouldn't forget about all that stuff. Because I would know, okay, I need to try this. So, reminders. Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure whatever's sitting there gets said. Nobody's sitting on the spot that you have to sit there. Anybody have totally different angles on this? Okay, well, one thing that will help me know they're coming down, and that will also, I think, help you is quite a few of them said 2 things. Number one, they're not they're not seeing you, the chairs are not seeing you as often as they thought they might. Now, I know I've been sitting here pitching that you're in charge of meeting patterns, but you'll calm them down if you'll pursue them more. That's one thing. The other thing is what you show up with and the way the products you give them to chew on and the way you explain yourself. When I told the faculty, how we're coming at this and trying to work clean with maps and using the maps, some of them said, I haven't heard any of that. I don't see any of that coming through. So it may be that you're not expressing it in the same way we are here, but in some form, whatever level of knowledge and understanding, savvy, and momentum you got, I think it's important that you disclose as much of that as you can in your chair. So, it's not like a poker game where you know twice as much as you're disclosing. You're not working with them full throttle, but rather working with them piece to piece. And there's no doubt that working with other people, like we've said, is going to be a form of turbulence. Would it be quicker just to do it yourself and turn it in? Yes, but that's not part of the thesis experience. The whole idea is to engage other minds and share with one of those other minds, and your chair truly can help you do that. So one of the things I'm going to urge you guys to do is find some way to meet with them more often. So, and also to begin to show them things, tell them things, produce things for them that make them a little less hand-wringing. My sense of how it's going, although I'm not super close to it, I'm looking for the pieces you turn in. Hearing you talk, it sounds like everybody's got traction. I don't hear anybody saying, I still don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what the nature of my research direction is. Do all of them need to still be tightened up? Sure, that's part of the process. So I was a little bit surprised at the reaction. It wasn't just some of the chairs said they'd like to see you more often, but the pervasiveness of the fact of concern that you may be heading for a cliff. And my response was, you know what? If this glass crashes and burns, we'll know not to do it this way. So you guys are really a test case, and you really do your fellows behind you a big favor. If you all nail your thesis and finish on time and have strong projects, and then the faculty will go, the freedom wasn't too much growth, they didn't hang themselves, they can handle it. Because I still come down the side of, you're our best and brightest. If you can't handle this, who can? And at some point, a school's got to say, students know how to run their own steam, manage their own projects, and people, even though it's a little bit jarring to experience all those role reversals. But it's still, that's what the thesis is about. Thesis is not a regular course where you're told to do pieces, and the course guarantees that the project is complete. So it is a different feeling. I'm not hearing here that anybody's sort of jittery about it and feeling like you're adrift or somehow don't know where you're heading or how you're going. Okay, I'm going to continue this line of thought because I promised them I would speak into this. They made comments like, do they realize that most of their writing needs to be done by the end of the fall? So let's get a little more detailed about this, and then we'll put it to rest. And I can tell them that the sermon's been delivered. Let's talk about ways the thesis can end. You guys have a sense for how some of your fellows have wrapped thesis up, but I think it's important to look at the range of ways a thesis can end. We can probably sit here and construct it ourselves, but I just want to speak into it. Obviously, the best thing that can happen is you finish strong and you're totally complete. In other words, you don't have any nagging sense that you didn't nail it all. You don't have a nagging sense that you left some of the good stuff behind, or that you didn't quite get your head around something. Somehow the quality of your thinking, or your writing, or your design. In other words, you go into your final presentation, when you go public with this, really feeling good about it and looking forward to sharing what you have, as opposed to going into your final thing with trepidation and your tail between your legs and hoping nobody recognizes that some of your stuff really doesn't hold water. So nailing it is obviously the first and best thing. When I say nailing it, I'm talking about several dimensions. But the thought quality is there, the writing quality is there, the report is really well done, your application is really well worked out, and your final oral description is nailed. So really doing a good job and closing strong is a multifaceted thing. So that's the best of all worlds. Now let's back off of that. What are some lesser ways that theses can one very common way is you limp in, and for some reason your chair doesn't stop you, says it's good enough, let's go ahead. You know, you got some story about family and you got to graduate. There's all kinds of reasons why that happens. That's really not a good feeling. This is supposed to be your best thing you've ever done because it's what you chose and you're also choosing how to do it. So to limp into the end of the thesis is really a bad feeling. And that's why it's really important to use the fall and to set a pace where you know you're going to do the work and do the thing that's necessary. But sometimes students will end, they'll graduate, the thesis will be a document, there'll be a design, but they know it's not their best work. It's just good enough. And so instead of trailing clouds of glory like you hope you will when you graduate, you're not feeling good about your last experience. And then you have the slide by, all the things that cost students not to finish when they were supposed to, not even the limping. So if you miss the deadline and all the university deadlines, you're probably looking at submitting and graduating at the end of the summer. And then it gets worse than that if you've got to slide into the fall, so you see what the game is now. And it is the case that sometimes students, because they have to leave school even though their thesis isn't totally done for whatever reason. Once you leave school, the longer time that goes by, the harder it is to get back to the thesis. All kinds of complicated things happen. Chairs retire, they forget what you were working on, you forget what you were working on. The university changes its rules for how long a thesis can be worked on. So the longer you let the thesis go undone, the bigger quicksand you're in. So there's all kinds of reasons why you want to work hard now and not let that be a possible danger. And then I even worked with some students who had to go away. They made these, over periods of years, made these sputtering efforts to come back and finish, but life would grab them and pull them back away. And there are thesis students or master students out there to this day who don't have a degree because they never got around to finishing the thesis. Because they were gone long enough that life wrapped around them and took them away, and despite their best intentions, they never got back to it. That kind of unfinished business, I'm sure, isn't always like that. So, there are all these lesser ways that the thesis can finish. There's really only one good way that thesis can finish. I guess one way of looking at that is the odds are not good. it's like some coach said, forward passes don't make any sense because of all the things that can happen, two-thirds of them are bad. So you wanna be serious now. You wanna manage yourself now. You wanna hit your marks now. You wanna make sure that you don't come up against the limp end situation or slide by situation.
I know when my last university, CPLA 2 years plus, and the other things before left to receive the entire season. So it's not like you can see I need and then I'm going from like you can't do that. Yes, that's the fact. Is it the same thing here?
I think it is, although that's been a fairly negotiable rule for a while. But, you know, my experience is that the longer an institution is involved in making rules, the harder and more extensive the rules get. And so I think that's something that is another kind of danger. Finish the thesis on.
The technical thing in the manual says 5 years maximum.
Well, some of these people I'm talking about, it's been more than 5 years. Okay, so those are in-game ideas. Now let me give you this little handout here, which you've seen before. And I've spoken in general terms about this table of content structure, which I keep saying you need to tailor to fit yourself. But what I've done is put F's for fall by things that to me are fair game. F not a game, F by S finish and fall. So it's not a great thing. And you'll see it's a pretty long list, and the reason is the way the calendar happens in the spring. So I'm gonna pass this out and talk about it. Then I'm gonna talk about the university calendar for wrapping the thesis up, and you'll see why there's such a big deal made of be productive in the fall, because once the spring starts, you're going to see all kinds of wheels in motion, which are going to speed the process up. And my sense is the quality of the thinking tends to drop because you're beginning to be pressed by rules and deadlines and that kind of stuff. And so all this keeps adding up to fall being the time to do the lion's share, the reading, the writing, the thinking, the processing. So everybody grab one of these. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I just want to run down it because you can see fall is by the lion's share of the content. So I'm just going to take a minute and run down it and speak about these topics again. If you start with the front end, a lot of that stuff is going to happen at the end. Title, signature, your acknowledgments, and figure list, all that is fairly late in the game. That can be a spring thing. The lion's share of your introduction can be written, those things that have F's by them, at least in semi-final draft form. What you may not be able to write about yet in the fall is because you haven't totally developed your scheme and your application, and you haven't reflected on findings. You may have some rough draft ideas noted, but you really can't finalize that till spring. That's really sort of final reflection type information. As I go down, if any of this generates questions, ask them. Research and analysis. Most or all of that can be done, at least in semi-final draft form. You can certainly have your literature review totally done. Overview of the field totally done, precedent study totally done. Might in the spring your chair say, you know what, I just discovered another great building and you need to add this precedent study. That's going to happen right after the end. But those things, I think, are probably the prime candidates to push on to make sure you're finished with them. And then even the analysis, you guys are becoming pretty clear about what the main theme or topic chunks are within the thesis. And so I wouldn't, as you become clear enough, I wouldn't wait to push into that. Begin to think about it and write about it, take those things apart, and produce the analytical components that we went over on the board the other day. And then down in your application, knowing your project, being able to write about how it relates to your thesis theme, why it's a good application in relation to your thesis. Having a little program and site analysis done, which we're going to deal with soon in this class. And then the project itself. I really want you guys to have started and maybe even concluded the major conceptual thinking on the scheme by the end of the fall. So heavy lifting in terms of ideas, site organization, building organization, macro form things are largely thought through and settled, at least in draft sense by then. You won't be ready to probably tighten and refine and finalize your project. That'll be a spring thing. And also a spring thing will be thinking about the passage of having done the application. Sort of final comments that you have in the application chapter, that last thing. Conclusions, to me, wants to wait until the spring, because those are your most cogent, wise, incisive, penetrating comments with the thesis passage largely finished. And conclusions is typically not a great big long ramble chapter. The focus in the conclusions is really the quality of the reflection on what you've just been through. You're already assembling the resources. You should be, if you're going to be doing some studies like little party models, diagrammatic studies, whatever sort of transformational, translational exercises you're going to do. Those certainly can be underway in the fall. And then the various iterations of what you're turning today, your periodic updates of what you say you're doing, what your latest title is, whatever revisions and table contents are, the refinement of your thesis diagram, your latest shot at the abstract, which is your brief cocktail party description of what it is you're doing in a nutshell. So these F's, which mean shooting to finish or largely finish those things in the fall, we've talked about them generally, but the faculty comments moved me to maybe be a little more documented and definite. So that's why I'm marking up the table of contents sheet that I did earlier. So let's stop and see what questions you have about that. So you may be naming these things different things and have reorganized it, but the chunk types and content types are somewhat similar. And what this is saying is shoot to have that largely done. What's your comment?
I just want to make sure we're finding.
Well, what is
findings or under introduction, and then after application says findings.
That's a nutshell description of what your final wisdom is. Okay. That's taking your conclusions and saying, I'm going to summarize now in brief form what this whole thesis led to, what the final findings. So remember, the introduction is not just to move us into it. The introduction gives us the whole story, including how the end wound up. And the abstract is the same thing. So the abstract is going to be the abstract is going to be, think of it as a summary of the introduction. And I can see the abstract's not even up in the front, which it should be somewhere. So that's really what that is. It's indicating that even in the introduction, commenting on the final findings of the thesis, it's disclosed. What other questions come up?
If we're working on our application, if we get our application filed by the fall, we can at least have a minor summary of it and introduction.
Yeah, you can speak into it in the introduction. Absolutely. Yeah. You're saying that there could be at least a partial edit on your application. Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Okay. My recommendation and my sense of a good way to proceed is don't wait until you know all of something before you start writing into it. It's better to muddle into it and write about what you know now, knowing you're probably going to modify it and add to it. But at least there's something to work with. It's not a blank sheet. It's much easier to add to and modify than to start from scratch. So getting things underway, even though you know they're not totally thought through. Same thing could be said about the analysis. You guys know in large part what your main thesis areas of investigation are. You already know a lot about it. We'll all start putting some words together. In some cases, writing may be really a pain for you and really a difficult process, and so you tend to avoid it. It's much nicer to kind of keep it loose and keep it fluid, and you're reluctant to start getting documented. But I want to talk you into feel the fear to do it anyway, because it's gonna lead to better conversations with the chair. Plus, you're gonna feel better about your progress when you start seeing product. To the extent everything is loose and pencil and you haven't begun to commit to anything because you're afraid to commit, or it's just a painful process, you're gonna just be sitting in the anxiety of having produced nothing yet. So one nice way to get over that hurdle is just start writing some stuff, which you guys have. You've got pieces of a literature search, pieces of a precedent study, pieces of an introduction. So the more pieces you get up and running, you can begin to see product building, and you can begin to check things off the table of contents as largely done, or see where you better spend some time in the following days or hours on the pieces. So I think it's important to get past the paralysis and the fear of producing something. Just let it be incomplete. Let it be, let it need editing, but just get it down and start producing. Like the English teacher said, it's a matter of making a mess and then cleaning it up. Well, it starts with making a mess. So produce your mess and type it up, and then that gives you something to talk with each other about. Okay, in the time we've got left, let me say a couple of things about the spring. And I'm pulling this out of the Office of Graduate Studies handbook. I want you to not use what I'm saying here as final gospel, because they may be revising that. So we want to keep checking it in terms of the end game. But I've been mentioning all along, and this is part of the faculty fear, they want to make sure that we know, you know, that we don't have the whole semester next semester to finish this. Things begin to pop about mid-semester. And so, right now, the end of April is the final day of class, and it's the 25th, April 25th. Mid-March is probably when you're going to have your formal thesis defense. Somewhere around mid-March. Right now it's March 15th. The day may change, but we know it's going to be somewhere around mid-March. 2 weeks before that, you have to announce your defense. And so the announcement that you're going to be presenting needs to go out 2 weeks before. Now, a lot of that, Mike or whoever's handling the thesis studio, they're going to be working with you on that. So I'm just talking about it. We're not going to really address that formally here because it's next semester. Around the 1st of March, the unbound copy of your thesis has to go to graduate studies. Now look at how this is backing up here. Now the unbound copy can still have revisions and still have editing corrections. But that's when they want to see that you essentially have your document done, even though it's still to some extent under construction. That's around the 1st of March. That means if school starts, let's say in early January, you have the month of January and February, basically 8 weeks, as opposed to 14 weeks, to do what needs to be done on the thesis before everything begins to make claims on what needs to happen. Now, some of the things we know need to happen are you've got to finalize and refine your design. Nobody's going to be done with design in the fall. If you are, you've got a big gold star on the board. You're going to have to produce your design presentation. So, you're going to be making drawings, making models. So there's design itself, and then there's the production of the design. There's going to be, your chair is going to want to be reading in detail your document. So you're going to have to factor in time with your thesis in your chair's hand. And you really can't force a pace there. Sometimes they'll say, give me 2 weeks. So it's not going to be a bam thing. There are going to be big lulls in there where you have to wait for something like that. And then you're going to be responding to the editing, responding to the comments. So there's some big cycles in there that have to be factored in. It's not going to be a matter of you writing it up and they not go get that marvelous stuff. There's going to be some cycling. Sometimes it's 2 and 3 cycles in terms of you getting documents or chapters. But almost every chair will at some point want the whole document for a while. Even after they've been editing separate chapters, they want to feel the whole thing together. So that's got to be in there. Then you're going to have meetings, and to some extent, there's slippage with meetings. You want to meet here, but somebody can't, so you've got to meet there. So there's built-in inefficiency in terms of getting people together. And then you've got your final document production. Even after your chair says, looks good, respond to my red marks, you still have to produce your document. The university has a rule about paper, and you've got to check your margins and pagination, make sure your table of contents matches your titles out of the text. There's quite a bit of that in the handbook of Office of Graduate Studies. So that's a list that I can think of right here. I'm not even producing a thesis. So what I'm saying is that's going to be one jammed 8 weeks. And it's going to be largely pressed in by things that are not the leisurely thinking pace that leads to a thoughtful thesis. So the reflection, the thought, the quality processing, the quality meeting conversations, the thoughtful writing, major conceptual thinking on design. That's why the faculty say, make sure they know they've got to be pushing. I'm hearing you guys say, we got this, we know we've got to get the lion's share done in the fall. We feel like we've set a pace and have our head around this. So I'm going to rest easy, assuming that you guys do have it under control. But because I promised them I would speak into this, I'm touching on these various things to make sure that now I can tell them, okay, they've heard it. Now if you crash and burn, they won't let me in this thing. Yeah, they will. So, everybody wants you to succeed, and I think part of the hand-wringing is they know this is a new experience. They know you haven't done this a lot. And because it's a maiden voyage to a large extent, they want to make sure that you have a feel for the level of effort and pace and what the nature of the game is, so that you don't misinterpret what it takes to do a good thesis in this time frame. And also a piece of this, you can see why faculty tend to say it's still too big, it's still too big, it's still too big. It's not that you couldn't do a scholarly study. It's just that the convergence path to closure is a 5-year thing, a 2-year thing. It's not a semester and a half. So, to a large extent, chairs harping about it's still too big, let's trim this, let's trim that, or tighten this up, or we won't look at this, is with an eye toward making sure that, number one, you can do a strong job with what you chose to do, even though it may be pared down, and also you can not just close, but close strong, not these limited pieces or drift line pieces. So that's the speaking into all this. And I don't think any of this is new to you guys, but maybe you're reiterating it. Maybe it's just enough to know that some faculty are fidgety about it. So, now I want to make sure that whoever's fidgety, we prove them wrong. I want you guys to nail this so that we can say this kind of freedom now needs to be built in thesis courses. Because to me it's a contradiction in terms to have an overly structured hand-holding thesis experience where you're not owning it, you don't feel the weight of it, you're not managing it, you're not in charge of it, you're not really even so off of it. It's just sort of more coursework. So any of this raise any issues or new questions or clarifications? I'm looking at our Monday thing, and Desmond and Aaron, you guys are up next Monday, right? Okay, what I'm going to do Friday is move into more detail on the applications, or I may push the research thing for a while. I want to think about that. But I'm inclined now. I've got a feel that you guys seem to have the scholarship underway. I'm inclined to turn a little bit out of the application design thing, components in that chapter, and speak about that and ask for some things down the road that will ensure that you're making progress there. And I also want to acknowledge that you're really serving 3, let's call it claims on your processing and management. I'm asking for things in here. Your chair is asking for things which are probably different than the things I'm asking for. And then you've got your schedule, which is things that you're trying to get done on certain days. I think that's a realistic picture. I don't think it's a bad picture. It's one of those things you have to finesse. I'm trying to be like-handed as much as I can in terms of what I asked for, and not making a big deal of the product. Your chair is probably going to be more demanding about how complete or how polished things you want to do. But you should be the most demanding of yourself in terms of what you're shooting for certain days. But I know, and the faculty know, that you're not just trying to manage one schedule, you're managing 3 schedules. And that's part of the thesis experience too. That's not something we need to take away. We're just managing it a little differently. Instead of having big flashy posters, we're trying to ask for things in a different way. Okay, if you've got your hand-ins today, I'll take those and look them over and I'll give you guys feedback. I'm hoping that the process of doing that there really is an occasion to think again about what you're doing. Maybe what I'll do when I get them back is ask you whether they've changed that much, whether this is busy work or whether it's useful. We don't have time to talk about it now, but reflect on this particular piece, because I'm going to ask you about me asking for this. Okay, see you Friday. Alvaro, I've got this here. I think it's looking good. I've edited some of the text, but it's really just picky stuff like legibility of charts, what we might get bigger. But I think the way you're writing about it and the way you're coming out is good. So just keep going this way.